mean I have to deal with the fact that son-in-law, who, one, is my favorite character, also the most complex character on this entire show, is now gone. Dearly beloved, we are here today to mourn the loss of my favorite character. It's such a tragic loss when he was taken away so soon. How will we ever recover? Hello. Today we're going to be talking about episodes 13 and 14 of Buried Hearts. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Jess. I love K-dramas and I just want to chat about them. And don't forget to subscribe to be notified of upcoming videos. A lot happened in these episodes and I can't wait to get into all of that. Also, I was trying on this outfit for an emo prom I'm going to this weekend, and I thought this kind of fit the vibe since we're going to be talking about death in these episodes. It's very like I'm going to a super classy funeral. So, without further ado, grab a drink, get comfy, and let's just chat about it. Let's jump into episode 13. So, picking up from where we were last episode, we find out that Grandpa Prosecutor was actually the one who sent Dongju those DNA results, letting him know that him and son-in-law were actually father and son. And then at the same time, during that whole shoot-up situation, he was the one who also, as we remember, called son-in-law right before he made the final kill shot and was like, oh, don't shoot him, he's your son. This man is so messy. So messy. He put these people in this situation. And now he's the one who's like informing them, being the good citizen and letting them know that, hey, you guys can't kill each other because you're father and son after everything that has already happened. But at the same time, Hae-young, who is son-in-law's son, had followed his father because he thought he was already suspicious. And then just as he gets to the site, he sees his father pointing a gun at Dongju, and then he runs in between them to stop the whole thing. And then he also sees that Dongju got shot, and he can infer from who the person was that shot him. And son-in-law this entire time is kind of like going through so many emotions. Well, this man actually is always going through so many emotions. But seeing his son there, the person he's kind of like, well, I guess now it's two sons. But seeing his son there, the person who he's kind of been fighting for in terms of like everything he's doing, kind of like looking at him with so much disgust, kind of like also makes him stop. So Tae-hyun takes Dongju away from the site and then takes him to a hospital. I am really glad that they're giving Tae-hyun stuff to do. Someone online called him like the human CCTV because he somehow always manages to like hear everything that's going on and pick up on all these clues. But my issue is that he never tells anyone about all of the different information that he is gathering because he knows a lot. He knows more than Unam, actually, because they're really keeping Unam in the dark about everything that's going on. So after this whole situation, multiple people in son-in-law's life confirm that Dongju is actually his son. And I will say episode 13 was a lot heavy on flashbacks to everything that happened a long time ago. So we do see a flashback of Good Doctor's father and Unam's father, who are friends with son-in-law, because they were like a trio along with Dongju's mom as well. And we hear that both of those men knew that son-in-law was the father, but they wanted to stay out of the situation and give the mom the opportunity to tell son-in-law at some point. And it was actually revealed that she was planning on telling son-in-law, I think the next day, but then she died in a car accident because of son-in-law. And at this, son-in-law is just like spiraling because he finds out that he is responsible for this and that that was his son, and that part of the reason that he killed or was involved in the death of his friend and his, I guess, ex and almost his son was because everyone thought that Unam's dad was Jungju's dad, when it turns out that that was never the case whatsoever. And so he decides to lock himself in a room and doesn't want to speak to anyone. And honestly, like, I don't really blame him. He was partially, like, manipulated in the entire situation, and I understand kind of, like, what he's feeling, but that doesn't really justify his actions. And then later on, Dongju decides to go visit him because Dongju can visit him whenever he wants, especially after being shot and then stabbed so many times throughout the series. And then when they have a conversation about the big revelation that they are father and son, there is this one line that son-in-law says, and he said, if I had known that you were my son, I would have still killed you. And I gasped, because why is this what you're saying? Why are you not remorseful of your actions, especially when your son is standing right in front of you, the person you have tried to kill over and over and over again? It's kind of crazy that he would even like say that to him. And he was like standing on business when he said it. He really didn't care, because if he hadn't done that, then he wouldn't have money, he wouldn't have status, and he wouldn't have been able to marry into this family. But still, he could have tried to be a little remorseful, or say it with a little bit of tact in front of Dong-ju. Later, son-in-law's wife finds out that Dong-ju is actually son-in-law's son, and she also spiraled out because she was the one who also told him to orchestrate this hit. And now that they're finding out the truth, she's just like in disbelief, because honestly, she didn't need to kill her husband, because he was never the father of the child whatsoever. I will say her response to the situation was a little weird. So as a response to this, she decides that because he is related to Dong-ju, she decides that son-in-law should be kicked out of Daesan. And for me, it didn't make a lot of sense in terms of her reasoning. She just said that he was unfit to be a father to Tae-hyun, but didn't really go further into detail in terms of why. Like, so what if Dong-ju is his son? Tae-hyun has always been his number one priority, and he's also tried to kill Dong-ju so many times. Dong-ju being related to him literally has no bearing on that. But it just goes to show that when it comes to son-in-law, his life isn't deemed valuable as some of the other characters, and people can pick him up and then toss him aside whenever they want. And this is also the case when son-in-law finally confronts a grandpa prosecutor about the entire situation, about the fact that he knew and is questioning him about when he found out that Dong-ju was his son. And grandpa prosecutor says, boo-hoo, literally fake crying. He's like, boo-hoo, I'm so sorry that you had to kill your son multiple times. If you didn't kill your son, you literally wouldn't be in the position that you're at now. And it's so ridiculous, like the way he says it, because this man literally does not care. But because of that, son-in-law has made the decision that he finally wants to cut ties with grandpa prosecutor. And I'm scared for his life. And when he cut ties with grandpa prosecutor, I was so happy. I literally, you can go back to my first video, I have been waiting for this moment of Dong-ju and son-in-law like finally being on the same side. Like, that's all I have been asking the drama gods, is that they could work together to defeat the common enemy of grandpa prosecutor. And I was so happy that it was finally coming into fruition. But this is where things go downhill. So in response, grandpa prosecutor goes to see the chairman, and he like spills the beans about the fact that Dong-ju and son-in-law are actually father and son, and that they probably kept it a secret because they wanted to work together and take down the chairman's son, or I guess who I'm calling Baker's son, so that he wouldn't be the future CEO of Daesan. And I was a little frustrated watching this. I will say it's probably because of the chairman's illness that makes him super susceptible to what grandpa prosecutor is saying, because chairman kind of goes along with it. He doesn't even have any doubt about the situation, doesn't really give them the opportunity to even like explain themselves or explain how this came to be. He instead decides that he's going to join hands with grandpa prosecutor and that he needs to take them out. And I think part of the reason it was also really frustrating is because Dong-ju specifically, since the moment he has stepped into Daesan, has been a ride or die for the chairman. And he was literally the one who pushed for his son to come into the family, despite the opposition from a bunch of the family members. So it's really disheartening to see that all of this work that he has put in, all that he has literally done for the chairman, just goes out the window because of one small comment that grandpa prosecutor made. And in addition to that, chairman essentially becomes complicit in the next set of actions that take place. at Dongju's place. So the chairman asked for Dongju and son-in-law to meet at Dongju's place so that they can explain this whole situation and the fact that they didn't tell them about the father-son relationship. So while they're waiting for chairman, we have this really great heart-to-heart moment between Dongju and son-in-law, where they're essentially talking about the fact that son-in-law tried to kill him multiple times. But the part that really stuck with me was when they were talking about whether or not in the future they could ever have a real father-son relationship, and whether or not they would even be able to make any like small talk in the future. And I was already like, I've been already like crying or like in my feels this entire episode, just because there's so many good moments. But specifically when we got to this moment, there's one line where Dongju is giving examples of what that looks like, and he was like, oh, will we ever get to the place where you'll call me and ask how I'm doing, like remind me to eat my meals, and I'll tell you to have a safe life or to make sure that you're also taking care of yourself. And I'm just like, oh, this is what I've been waiting for. Like, they both need this moment. And then at some point they run out of alcohol, and Dongju says he has more in his study, so he goes up to get it. And then while he gets it, there is a knock, or I guess a doorbell. The doorbell goes off, and then son-in-law opens the door without checking who it is. And I, for one, did not understand that. As a result of him living in the mansion that he never had to open a doorbell, because why would you not check either through the peephole or the fact that he literally has a video stream right next to the door where you can see who it is? I don't get it. I really don't get it. But he decides to open the door without checking. And then it happens to be one of Grandpa Prosecutor's goons that we've seen in subsequent episodes, one of the people who had escaped from the place that Dongju and Beardy were holding him. So the first thing he does is he stabs son-in-law, and then Dongju comes down and he sees this. He also wrestles with him a bit. And keep in mind that Dongju gets stabbed. Dongju was already shot at the beginning of this episode, and he was shot multiple times over the course of the show. Somehow he's still standing, but he gets stabbed again. And then just as the goon is going to go in for the final stab, we see son-in-law jump in, even though he was bleeding out on the floor. He jumps in between them and then starts fighting him off. And then there's this moment. There's this moment where as they are fighting, they fall off the balcony. Dongju's home, and on the way down, he hits his head and then he's bleeding out on the floor. I was bawling this entire moment, because what do you mean I have to deal with the fact that son-in-law, who, one, is my favorite character, also the most complex character on this entire show, is now gone. Also, the fact that for 13 freaking episodes, I have waited for them to be on the same side, and then it came in the fact that they're not even just on the same side. They are blood freaking related. And now, just when we have this beautiful moment where this friendship and this camaraderie is growing between the two, and they're talking about how they want to be, hopefully one day, a regular father and son, they take that moment away from us. They just take that moment away from us, and it's not fair. It's really not fair. And it really sucks, because from Dongju's perspective, he's had so many people taken away from him in his life. For example, his mom, and then also his sister, and then now it's his father. And all of this is a result of literally Grandpa Prosecutor. Grandpa Prosecutor is the one who keeps taking things away. Also, another person to add on the list, Unam as well. He has had a hand in just continuing to take people away from Dongju. And then also, Taehyun's memory of his father, at least his last memory, is kind of tainted by a lot of the actions and a lot of thoughts he had of his father being suspicious, and then his father almost shooting who is now his half-brother, Dongju. And I just really feel bad for Taehyun in this regard. It's so unfair and it's also so annoying. But at the same time, I will say that this is my favorite episode of the series because it was just filled with, one, some action, but I really like shows that kind of like make you feel something. And I felt like this episode specifically did a really great job of keeping that tense and kind of like emotional tone for an hour or so. So for episode 14, I'm going to break it down to 2 parts. The first part is the aftermath of the attack. And then the second part is the takedown of Grandpa Prosecutor. So a part of me really hoped that he would have survived the fall, but alas, it did not happen. But, honestly, we didn't see any ambulance taking him out of the apartment or anything, or any real hospital scenes. So as campy as the show is, and as ridiculous as the show is, if they decided to do a fake death where he faked his death and then he comes back in the finale, I personally would not be opposed to it. But I also don't really think that it's gonna happen. And then we also find out that there was more to the conversation between Dongju and son-in-law than what we were shown in episode 13. And then they're really out here to torture us because they show one specific moment where son-in-law says, if I want to live to the day where I hear you call me father, I'm gonna have to live a very long time. Cue the tears. Oh my God, I was just so upset. Even seeing that just made me even more angry about the fact that he had died, because he really wanted to have some sort of relationship with his son. And because of the death, it results in a lot of tension between Dongju and some of the characters. So with the funeral of son-in-law, Dongju takes it into his hands to specifically ban chairman and Grandpa Prosecutor for their involvement in his death. Also, another family meeting happens where the chairman is really upset about the fact that Dongju was the one who took the urn with son-in-law's ashes in it. And then when he starts to question the family about the fact that they didn't do anything to stop him, most of the family, specifically Unam and Taehyun, are just I don't care. That's also his dad. He can do whatever he wants. We don't want his ashes. And then his wife is literally what was I supposed to do? He walked in with a DNA result and that is his son. There's literally nothing I can do about it. And then during the scene, you can also see how annoyed the family is with the chairman's new wife. They literally all hate her. And I'm so excited for wherever this is going for next week's episodes. On another note, I'm really annoyed with the way the chairman is acting. I know it is a result, possibly, of his illness, because a lot of what he's doing and saying just feels very much out of character for him, I will say, to the point where he still threatening Dongju over everything that happened, even though he also was the result of son-in-law dying. And to that, Dongju kind of proves that he can get his son, chairman's son, Baker's son, to essentially do whatever he wants. And I absolutely love that Dongju really has these young men wrapped around his finger, because Taehyun and Baker's son will literally do whatever he asks just because he has that much of an influence on them, and I am absolutely here for it. Now, on to the most important part of episode 14, the takedown of Grandpa Prosecutor. So, while Grandpa Prosecutor is still on the hunt for the Dandelion files, he uncovers the secret meeting spot that Verity, Dongju, and Hacker have been meeting up at. So, while they are at the hiding spot, Verity is there, and in true Grandpa Prosecutor fashion, he kidnaps Verity, tortures Verity, and essentially says that he's going to keep torturing him until he gives up the location of the original files. And when Dongju finds out about this, he goes to, surprisingly, the Elder for help. So if you don't remember, the Elder is the person who's above Grandpa Prosecutor. It's unclear if this person is, I don't think they're the president, but it's very much unclear in terms of what part of government they are, because they keep mentioning like presidential election. But essentially the elder is already kind of like pissed off at grandpa prosecutor because there are rumors circulating that he was involved in the death of son-in-law. Also, he's supposed to be keeping the peace between him and Dongju as promised in a couple of episodes ago. So he decides that he's gonna ask a favor and have Dongju and grandpa prosecutor meet in order to make an exchange. Before I get to the exchange, it was so funny because the elder was talking to someone he works with, and he was like, just so you know, man, like if I ever end up dead, it's probably because of grandpa prosecutor. Like this man is so dangerous. So like we need to watch out for him because I really want to be president. And it was so funny just because literally everyone sees how much, well, everyone except for the chairman, sees like how much of a threat that grandpa prosecutor is. Now onto the exchange. It happens on a rooftop. So Dongju brings the dandelion files in exchange for Beardy, and when grandpa prosecutor gets his hands on the files, he immediately throws them into a fire that they have. If you watch KDramas, you know what I'm talking about. They always have like a barrel of fire and then they just throw it in. So he throws in the files, and a part of me is hoping that those were not the real files, that they were fake ones, because grandpa prosecutor didn't even like check any of them. He immediately took them and then just threw them in. So after he has the files, Dongju is questioning what he's hiding in those files and why they're so important to him. And immediately, grandpa prosecutor, you can see him kind of like snap a little bit, and he gets a little defensive, saying that there's nothing on the files that could incriminate him in anything. He says that everything he's done has been for the good of this country, and people like Dongju don't understand that. People whose lives are insignificant don't understand them. And then this man, the audacity of this man, he brings up Dongju's sister and essentially blames her death on Dongju, saying that if Dongju hadn't taken the password for the slush fund, then his sister would be alive. So his sister in the afterlife is probably blaming Dongju for his death. And Dongju had better composure than I would, because the fact that he said that to his face was like truly wild. And then the next thing he does is he is like, well, it's time for you to go. So he asks for his goons to grab Dongju and throw him off the rooftop. And just as they're about to throw him off the rooftop, we see a drone pop up, and then the drone starts recording all of the goons and basically an entire situation that's happening before landing on grandpa prosecutor. And we see that this was part of Dongju's plan. So this entire time he had been recording the conversation with grandpa prosecutor, the conversation where grandpa prosecutor first of all admitted to murder and a bunch of other crimes. And then we see right on the building next to them that there's a live stream happening, and you can see like the TV. There's a live stream happening of everything that grandpa prosecutor just said, and then it's also live because of the drone, and they had worked with a journalist to put this whole thing together. So essentially plan one was to use the dandelion files if they could, and then plan two was to have him just admit all of his crimes and be able to record him, and they got him. I will say I am happy that this happened, but also it kind of felt underwhelming a bit for me. Very interested in what your thoughts are in this case, but I felt that it was a little underwhelming just because I feel like grandpa prosecutor has really skated by for the past 13 episodes and hasn't really been taken down or really hasn't suffered any consequences this entire time. And I feel like I thought it would be more of a grand plan in order to take him down. And then the other thing is, I really want to know what his big secret is, because it can't just be that he was protecting the country and that's why he did all this. Like, honestly, that's kind of boring. Like, I want to know what the big secret is. What is he hiding in those files that he does not want anyone to know? Because anytime he has even he's killed so many people in the show, but anytime he's killed anyone in the show, he didn't really care if someone found out. He never was honestly scared in the show until the topic of the Dandelion Files came up. So honestly, I'm going to be really disappointed in the show if we don't get that information in next episode. But overall, I am here, I am excited, and I am glad that this man has been taken down somewhat. My prediction for the finale are as follows. I hope we do learn some information about Grandpa Prosecutor's bad deeds. I also hope that we see the takedown of Chairman and his wife. I know it's never going to happen, but I would actually love for son-in-law's wife, who hates Dong-ju, to actually work with him in order to make that happen. I also feel like a new CEO of Daesan is going to be named. Honestly, I don't know who it's gonna be. And then lastly, I feel like Unam and Dong-ju are gonna get married. And I will say here, as I've said since episode 1, I really don't support their relationship. I also am glad that their relationship has really not been a focus. And I honestly don't think they should be together, because also Unam has been kept in the dark about everything that is happening. She was probably one of the last people to know about the fact that that was his father, and she still has no idea about all these other situations. So I think Dong-ju just needs to be freed from this family, and the only way he can do it is to leave all of them behind. Finally, rest in peace to son-in-law. Honestly, you really will be missed. I could go on and on about how complex of a character son-in-law was, but I honestly don't want to make this video longer than it is. So maybe I'll save that for next week's episode of the finale, or maybe a post video after the finale, just talking about his character and maybe some of the other characters as well. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on these episodes and how you feel about the death of son-in-law, as well as your predictions for the finale. On that note, have a great day, and I will see you guys next week for the finale.